We're going to get started. Go ahead and keep eating. You're fine. Welcome. Good afternoon. My name is Danielle Randall, and I'm the current president of the Girard Area Community Foundation. Next month, I'll start my 9th year on the foundation. So I'm a huge supporter of our community, and being on this foundation has been great for me and super fulfilling. Just last year, we granted over $63,000 to our local nonprofits who are doing huge projects to better our community all the time. I want to quickly recognize our two sponsors that has helped us put on this event, GN Bank and Crawford County Farm Bureau. We greatly appreciate your support and your support all year long. I just want to let you know we will take a quick break halfway through, but feel free to get up, get a cookie, refill your drinks. If you don't know, the bathrooms are just down the hallway to my right. If you're from Girard, you probably already know that, but just letting you know. Thank you for being here, and we hope you enjoy the presentation.
All right. Well, welcome again. My name is Devin Werman. I'm with the Community Foundation of Southeast Kansas. We're proud to host this event in conjunction with the Girard Area Community Foundation. We'll talk a little bit about what the Community Foundation is. I know some of you probably know the name, maybe not exactly what we do, and as well as the Girard Area Community Foundation. So we'll talk a little bit about that at the end. Glad that you all had an interest in this topic. We're really excited for our presenter today. I do want to open up just a brief moment to thank our two sponsors who are helping cover the cost of the lunch that you're enjoying today. So first is Craig Garrett with GN Bank. So.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Craig Garrett. I'm with GN Bank. I am a assistant vice president, loan officer out of our Pittsburgh location. Obviously want to thank you guys very much for being here. Feel that this is something very important to continue planning for our next generation and what we need to do. So hopefully we can kind of build on this in the future and that and just kind of work from there. Just want to, like I said, thank you guys for coming out and that. So
Good afternoon. My name is Lori Johnson, and I'm kind of dual representing today. Farm Bureau Financial Services and Crawford County Farm Bureau, and my sidekick, Marianne, is back in the room. She's our county coordinator and really spearheads a lot of these events, and we appreciate her work. I'm also a trustee on the Community Foundation, so I'm here with the interest of providing additional information for our ag families and transitioning into the future. And Farm Bureau is always proud to be a community partner with any event, so we're happy to be here and we're happy to support you and all your efforts. Thank you.
All right. Thank you both as well. Just want to make a quick moment to recognize, Lori said she's on the board, and Danielle. Dan Dooling's also on the Girard Area Community Foundation board. And am I missing any other GACF board members? For the Community Foundation of Southeast Kansas, oh yeah, and Kim. We'll introduce Kim in a second, so thank you, Kim. We have our president, Linda Grills, and our treasurer, Ken Cunningham, as well. And then as far as staff, we have a full-time staff of 5. The GACF board are all volunteers. We thank them for their commitment and your guys' work and volunteerism. But if you ever want to reach out, and our phone number's on a lot of those for our office here. Joshua McLeod's our donor relations coordinator, and Matthew Buck is our marketing director. But with that, we'll get into what you came for, our program. So I'm going to introduce Kim Viets. I think you probably all know Kim, but she's going to introduce our speaker today as well, and we're looking forward to some great information. So, Kim.
Thank you, Devin. Can you hear me? 2 years ago, I went to a conference in Manhattan called Women Managing the Farm. And Ashlee was one of our speakers. That's where I got to know her. And she talked about succession and transition of farms from one generation of farm family to the next. And I came home to Southeast Kansas and I went, I know a lot of family farms that could use some of this information. So I got together with our board. They thought it was a good idea. I talked to Craig Garrett. Craig was all behind it. And so now we've put together this lunch and learn session. Ashlee will be our speaker. Ashlee graduated from the University of Nebraska at Lincoln with her bachelor's and her master's degree. Please don't hold that against her. She is awesome. Some of you I know have heard of Dr. Ron Hansen from the University of Nebraska. He spoke down here a couple of times. Ashlee is the new Dr. Ron Hansen. Our daughter Ainsley is taking a class. Ashlee is this semester. Ashlee is her teacher and also her mentor. So Ashlee works with families. She's also a mediator. She helps start those hard conversations of what happens, when we pass, how do we pass things on to the next generation? And I know that Ashlee could talk for, I don't know, 6, 18, 2 days. Mark and I went to a conference 2 weeks ago with Ashlee. It was 2 days of this, and she can get in depth. So if this is something that we'd like to build on, maybe she and her team can come back in the future. With that, I will present Ashlee Westerhold, and we have a gift for Ashlee.
Oh, well, thank you. Well, good afternoon. So this week has been kind of crazy. My 3-year-old got his tonsils and adenoids out on Monday. So if anyone has had a 3-year-old, you should not have them do surgery because he has been on a hunger strike, and I now think that it is more dramatic than actual pain that he is feeling. So I left this morning to my husband, locking him in the bathroom, him and himself in the bathroom with a pudding cup, trying to force my 3-year-old to eat. So it has been a week for me, so I apologize if I seem tired. I am. I also, like Kim said, I teach in the spring semester, so I am on Tuesdays and Thursdays teaching an undergraduate course, which I'll get into what my office all does later in my presentation. But I have given many different presentations. My husband this week, I said, I have to get my presentation to the Community Foundation people today. And he was like, Ashlee, you have so many presentations. I said, yes, but I now have a new fan, and her name is Kim, and she has seen all of my other presentations. So now I have to add new slides because of my fan following me around and seeing all the other things that I have presented before. You're so awesome. Oh, well, thank you, Kim. So today I'm going to talk to you about legacy planning. So what is your legacy? Because it is most important that you guys determine what your goals are for the future before you go any other step. So people really give me feedback of, I just want to listen to an attorney for 6 hours. And I'm like, yes, you can learn about trust and wills and entities like LLCs, corporations, S-corps, but none of that matters if you don't know what you're going to do with that. So what are your goals? What are the reason that you're here? Why are you still farming? Why does it matter to you to be in agriculture? Why does it matter to you to continue Girard as a community or Southeast Kansas as a community of agricultural producers? What is your why? And we'll get into that. But really, we're talking, again, I can have a lawyer talk and you guys would all love it. However, what you did with what he talked about, I do not know if you'd be sitting in the seat again next year not having completed an estate plan or transition plan. Just because he talked about trust doesn't mean everyone needs a trust or whatever that might be. So I am more on the soft skills side of having family communication, family goal setting, and get you to the point that I think you are ready to talk to an attorney or an accountant about what your goals are and how we need to frame everything to make it successful in accomplishing those goals. So again, like I said, I have a 3-year-old. I also have a 15-month-old. So I am busy. Edie is the light of our life. I talk to farm families all the time about their family, so I always showcase my family. Just so you know, I am human. I am not a robot. I do have family of my own. Edie is very lazy. She is not motivated by anything. She is 15 months and refusing to walk. The doctor assures me that she is fine. But it's very hard as a mother when you have kids that come out of the womb so different. And I think that that's also a part about family sitting or family goal setting, is that even though your 2 kids might be raised in the exact same house in the exact same way, they come out different. And so I knew they were going to be different when I was pregnant with each of them, just the way they acted. But now that they're both here, it's completely different. Otto, my 3-year-old, stubborn too, so they both get it from me, but he is very outgoing and active, and he wanted to be out in front of everyone, where Edie is very reserved. And again, my kids are under 4 years old, and I know this about them already. So this is my family. I do have a husband. I forgot to put him on here. I think that's very consistent with motherhood. I do have a husband. He is a wheat breeder at Kansas State. He's in agronomy. You guys probably don't have too much wheat around here in the area you're in, but he works on red durum wheat and drought resistance. So if you're ever interested in that, you can talk to him about it. So for me, my background, I actually grew up in Georgia. And I grew up in Georgia because my dad went to Vietnam, got his GI Bill, went to the University of Nebraska, became a computer scientist. We did not have the farm on my dad's side because my dad's dad died in a freak accident when my dad's dad was 50 years old. And he had kids later in life, so my dad was only 9 when his dad died. So his brother and him and his other brother had to move into town with my grandma because there wasn't a plan in place of grandpa dying that young. And so the farm is still continued in my great uncle's line, but not in mine. On the other side of my family, on my mom's side, we have a farm in northwest Illinois. And so crop, corn, soybeans, beef cattle. And my aunt and uncle, they had 2 kids. One is in Arkansas as a diesel mechanic, and one has been in and out of rehab. Should they leave that farm to either of those kids? This is a question that we're posed with in a family of saying, your next generation or who should be taking over this farm is probably not in your line. It might be in my line, my family line. It might be a neighbor that should start renting from them, a kid that can help them now. But their children do not look like they would be able to manage this farm, nor do they want to. And so we have succession issues that have happened in my family. We have them currently. We are living it. And so this is kind of a background of how I got into the line of work that I currently do. So right now, about 85%, a little less, of Kansas farms are family owned. The average Kansas farmer, as you all probably have seen in the census, continues to go up, but it was 58.1 years old. And then I did some calculations off that census data, and about 2/3 of all of our farmers are over 55 years old. So if we think of a retirement age of 70, that means that there should be a lot of transition happening in the next 15 years. 2/3 of our farm should be transitioning over the next 15 years. So that is a huge influx of why this topic has become so popular, why it's become such a hot topic. And so we are going to see that a lot in Kansas. So I put in here defining your legacy. So what is a legacy? Legacy involves recognizing the importance of how one's life impacts others. It is about understanding that actions today have the power to influence the future, shaping how we are remembered and the mark we leave on the world. Such as principles instilled in your family members, charitable work done in one's lifetime, or innovations and ideas that continue to benefit society. So again, we're talking about legacy, and your legacy will be different for whoever you are, whatever role you've played in your life, however you want to be remembered. But legacy threads past and future generations. So if you think about the legacy, why you are farming today, some of you might say because there has been a family legacy of farming in our family. We have continued the farm because we want that to be our legacy. We might have memories of us riding in the combine with Grandpa, and then we also are riding in the combine with now our grandchildren. So we might have seen 4 generations in our lifetime doing the same type of work, and we view that as our legacy. But really, the heart of a legacy would be the installation of those family values. Those are what carries on to people if they're on the farm or they're not on the farm. But sustainable family relationships, there's a transfer of family knowledge, family wealth management, family enterprise succession, but really family legacy is supposed to thread future and past relationships and make you think about what you want your tie to be. So this could be personal, this could be professional, this could be philanthropic, this could be creative legacy, and these are all kind of types of legacies that we would want to leave. So that personal legacy, again, would be those values and beliefs and traditions passed down within a family. So can someone give me a value that you hoped you instilled in your children? Honesty. That's a great one. Trustworthiness. Work ethic. That's a huge one for farm families.
Reliability.
Oh, reliability. Like that one.
Perseverance.
Perseverance. A lot of farm families usually say faith, too. There is no one more faithful than a farmer, or you wouldn't do it. You pray for rain, you pray for crops to grow. So faith is usually a pillar in a lot of farm families' lives. But there's a lot of values and beliefs that you probably wanted to raise your kids on the farm, so they were instilled with them. There's probably a lot of traditions that you guys hold because you were on the farm or because you have a farm. Another part of personal legacy are ethical principles a parent instills in their children, the cultural heritage preserved through generations, and cultural could mean like small town culture. It doesn't necessarily mean that you are Swedish and have culture, which Lindsberg would tell me differently on that one because that is very much in their culture. But personal legacy, do you want to leave a personal legacy? Do you want to be a part of that for your kids? And so that's all these you can pick or you can choose which kind of legacies you want to leave. There's not just one, but all of these can be legacies in how you leave them. A professional legacy is what you have contributed to one's field of work. An example could be a farmer who was a first adopter of conservation practices. Are you a first mover? Is you being ingenuitive or creative, or the idea of you could fix anything? So there's a lot of people that I work with that they're like, we can't lose Dad. His legacy is that we'll never have to take something to the shop. He is willing to fix anything and is able to do that. And I think that legacy of we fix it ourselves is instilled in a lot of farm families. And so another one could be we produce quality beef, and we have for a very long time. And the legacy will be that we continue to do that as a family or with our name out front. So the next one would be philanthropic legacy, which again, we are here with the Community Foundation. It is important. Many people choose to leave a lasting legacy impact through charitable activities. This could be through foundations, donations, or initiatives that continue to support causes that they were passionate about. I had a farmer in Downs, Kansas, and he was a pillar in his community. He loved being a part of city council. He was very much about, we need to bring the young people back to Downs, Kansas. And that was his kind of value or goal that he had. But another thing that he also was very passionate about and wanted to leave a legacy is that his farm paid for the first men's basketball game, high school men's basketball game, popcorn. Everyone got free popcorn at the first men's high school basketball game. And he wanted that to be continued way past his life. And so there are things that you can be specific about philanthropic or community, and don't limit yourself if you want to leave a legacy that you've continued to be a part of in your life. Lastly, there's the creative legacy. So artists, writers, musicians, other creatives leave a lasting legacy through their work, influencing culture and inspiring future generations. Do we have any cowboy poets in here? No? Any singer-songwriters in here that would actually admit to it? I won't make you sing. Yeah. So if you are a creative, want to leave a creative legacy, I mean, it's very important for you to write down your songs, write down your stories. Some farmers are really good storytellers, and those stories get passed down from generation to generation. But if you have the time and bandwidth, starting to write down some of those stories are very important for the next generation. I also put on here like woodworking or metalwork is considered creative. So if you had woodworking, I actually had a family farm that they were like, the kids won't fight over the land. The kids will fight over this kitchen table that was made by Dad. And so he was a really good woodworker, and he wanted a lot of his legacy preserved in his woodworking. And so he was being very intentional to kind of give that table to the kids that had kids, so he knew it was going to make it to another generation. So again, these are just ideas of thinking about what does legacy mean for you? What does legacy look for your families? But each person will have a different plan to protect their legacy. What is your current situation? So people in here, you might have a family member who's coming back, and you are trying to have a family member in succession with you. Someone might have a hired person who is very interested in taking over that operation. And then we call that a non-traditional or non-family member, non-related succession plan. And some of you are going to reap what you have sowed, actually get your equity out of a business you have built, and might have planned to sell or gift. And that could be during life or after death. But legacy planning will be different for each person. But how do we start doing the work? And so one huge part about how to get started is that we need to know where we are today. And where we are today should look at financial statements. So organizing financial information. Like Kim said, I have Ainsley in our class. A huge part of the course that we have for kids returning to the farm is that we spend about 6 weeks just on financial information. Finances are a huge part of taking on a family business and understanding a family business, but also the comfort level for that retiring generation to step away needs to be reflected in the financial information. So what has the farm net worth been? What is the farm income statement? What is your personal net worth? The last couple of days, I travel around the state. Well, I guess this was last week. But I had someone who gifted the farm $300,000 of their personal money over time. So their personal statement, they had an accounts receivable of $300,000 that the farm owes them. Even though they're the operator of the farm, they still put in their personal assets to help support the farm. Well, they're not going to feel comfortable stepping away from the farm if the farm owes them that much money. They're going to want to control or want to make sure that they're going to get paid back. And so these things are very important so that we understand where you are today. Another part of this that no one likes to talk about or set up is really retirement. I know farmers, retirement means death in a lot of people's minds, but that is not the case. You can retire. You can retire to being the gopher. You can retire to being the repairman. There is some day where you will probably need someone else to make those management decisions. But what are our retirement needs? What will we realistically spend in retirement? Monthly, annual spending, and then what are you retiring to? So a lot of this, when we talk about legacy planning, we talk about succession planning, again, we need people to think about what they're retiring to, not what they're retiring from. And that's a way to continue farmers to think of a different way of retirement. So I just had a conference around the state. Nearest one to you guys would have been in Lawrence. And we had a speaker, his name was Lance Woodbury, and he talked to our farmers about what is your second mountain. There's a book by David Brooks that is the second mountain, but in your life, there's going to be kind of two mountains. Your first mountain is raising your family, just surviving. You start and build a business. Maybe it's a business that you inherited, maybe it's a business that you started yourself, but you're in this constant state of building. Then you're solving problems, you are managing details, you accumulate wealth over time, you achieve the scale that you're comfortable. So for some of you, maybe you haven't grown or expanded because you guys have hit your stride. You didn't need to. You have been efficient, it has supported you, you continue to stay on the same kind of business level, and you can be recognized for your accomplishments, and you focus on success. Well, from there, we need to look at our second mountain. So that would be enjoying our family relationships. Start or build a charity or serve on boards. Start becoming that mentor. So if you're mentoring someone who's going to take over the farm, are you getting fulfilled through that? Are you being a mentor to other farmers in the community that are just starting? I know some of you in here are first generation farmers that could really help another generation learn from your mistakes as someone who started from scratch. You could be elsewhere in this second mountain. If any of you have goals to go to Florida or live an RV life and bother all of your kids, you are welcome to do that as your second mountain. Give wealth away, achieve meaning, purpose, help others succeed, focus on significance. The real part is that bottom little segment right there. There isn't room for everyone on top of the first mountain. If you stay on top, others will stop climbing. So the idea is that we have to pass on this business someday. And if we are continuing to remain on the top and not get to our second mountain, then others will be discouraged. And a lot of people call me, so I work with farmers and ranchers all the time. A lot of people call me at age 75 or 80, and I would say that is my average age of people who call me, and they say, my 50-year-old child is very upset with me. And I was like, why? Well, I haven't let them have any ownership yet. They haven't made any management decisions. They haven't been a part of any profit sharing. And I was like, why is that? Well, they're not ready. And a lot of people say that to me. And their kids have been back 30, 35 years at this point, and they're still not ready to let go. So I even had someone call me and say their 55-year-old quit farming one day. Just quit, stopped showing up, and went and started working in construction, of all places, at 55 years old. Because once you're a farmer, I mean, your back is already shot. So you might as well go into construction after being a farmer, I guess. But the point was that he didn't feel safe being on the farm. He worked there for 35 years. His dad wasn't guaranteeing him anything or talking about an estate plan or talking about what happens if dad were to not be there tomorrow. And he said, I'm not doing this anymore to just benefit my dad, make my dad more money without there being protections for me and my child who wants to return. So that is a very hard conversation to have at 55 years old. I'm encouraging a lot of my students to have an understanding of what the expectations are from their family starting at 25 years old. Because I don't want to hear them say, well, I would have never came back if I would have known at 55 this is where I would still be. And I feel like there's a lot of people that actually say that. I wouldn't have come back if I knew that I would still be in this spot at 55 with no ownership, no management decisions. But that wasn't what was promised. So the thing is do farmers step away? Is it possible for farmers to ever step away? So is there a turning in the keys moment for a farmer? Sometimes you take away their keys. I have had that happen to some of my 90-year-olds. There are things like you are able to see what needs to be done because you live at the home place. I have one of my farm families. She is 78 years old. She is widowed now for 8-9 years. And she lives at the hub, what they call the hub. And she was like, well, why would I call my son to come take care of this when I see it needs to be done? And so there's concern about, well, mom keeps having control. And so we had to have the conversation of what would make you feel more comfortable to let your son take over this part of the business. Let him check cows, let him feed cattle. And she was like, probably if I wasn't here. And then I have to ask her, okay, are you realistically ever going to want to move? And she was like, absolutely not. So there's a lot of people say things, and then my job is to make sure that they understand what they're saying. So what they're agreeing to, what they're actually trying to talk about, because a lot of people have conflicting beliefs. So some people tell me, I love all my children equally, and so I'm going to give them equal shares of the business. And I was like, okay, so are you okay with them selling a part of the business? And they're like, well, they would never do that. And so I have the hard job of saying, realistically, one of them will at some point. And so if you want the farm to never sell, then you need to have protections in there to make sure it doesn't happen. But a lot of people have, again, conflicting beliefs of, well, I inherited undivided interest from my parents, and it was the worst thing that has ever happened to me. But I am doing that exact same thing to my kids. And I see that almost weekly. And so it's really hard in my job. Again, that's why I'm very popular now, is because I am the devil's advocate. I'm the bad person that asks these hard questions. I try to make you think about what actually happens when you make those decisions. But farmers can implement variations of stepping away. If you're interested, maybe you've always liked the cow side, but the crop side, you're like, oh, I could take it or leave it. Well, maybe that's a way for you to start transitioning one aspect of the business for a younger generation. Or maybe the younger generation, again, related or non-related, are interested in one segment of the business. Could they start making just management decisions on a quarter? Could they make management decisions on the crop mix because they were an agronomy major? They've been back for 7 years. And we'll go through all of these, but increased use of farm labor, custom operations, custom farming, crop share, cash renting, and then a transition from 100% of operations and management to simply ownership. So can your successor take over one of your enterprises to free up some time? Usually it's the cattle side. The cattle are dangerous after a certain amount of age. You don't want to fall. You don't want to be pushed over. You don't want to feed them twice a day or once a day. You don't want to be the one that wakes up and deals with pulling calves. So usually in my line of work, you see the cattle side being very gracefully given over to the younger generation. But things like seed stock selection, feed rations are things that a lot of the time older generations still like to maintain control over. So we actually met with a family and they said if dad dies, the worst thing that will happen is we have no idea how he comes up with his ration. Like it is a black box that not one of us knows. And I asked Dad, I said, have you ever written down what you do? And he goes, no, because I take a little of this, I take a little of this, I look at the K-State thing, I look at this, and every day I come up with a new mix. And I was like, oh my God. So it's kind of like when my husband cooks and I can never eat the same thing again. So it's very frustrating as someone. My husband will just come up with something. And I'm like, I have to savor this meal because I will never get it again because nothing was written down. And a lot of people do that in farming. Someone could not do the job that you do or know how you do it because they don't have the time to follow you around and be your shadow, or you haven't written it down for them. A lot of times that's where succession kind of fails or transition fails, is the next generation is not prepared to take on the business because we haven't adequately prepared them to do so. So should you consolidate or sell an enterprise to grow another enterprise? If you have a child who's like, I will not touch cattle, I do not want cattle, is it worth thinking about selling off the cattle side to build crop operations? And I actually had that done. We were in Woodbine. I have a farm family. They have one child who is coming back. He's like, I hate cattle. I don't know why he does. He grew up on a farm that had a cow-calf operation, but he's like, I hate them. I don't want to deal with them. My parents are now 72 years old. They can't be out there doing it. So I would rather them sell off the cow herd and we figure out ways to expand land near us for crop. And so that's what we're doing. We have to be very strategic because of tax implications with selling things. But we are recognizing that the next generation might have a different operation than what we currently have. But that doesn't mean they're not farming. That doesn't mean they're not doing a good job. It just going to look different. So another way of kind of helping you step away, if you're interested, is the increased use of off-farm labor. So can you stop doing a majority of the labor? Can you replace your labor with the next generation? Maybe you have more hired hand help into the operation, which will help you hopefully step away. Another one is custom farming. If you guys are interested, reducing your hours on the operations, hire custom operators, hire your children as custom operators. So sometimes people forget that their children can be separated from who we are as individuals or our business, and they could be treated as custom hire workers so that they can build their own income. They might have their own machinery and equipment. There are ways to have that done easily, or it could be complicated, but it could be a way to start stepping away. Crop sharing would be the next one. Provide a means for a tenant to have adequate size, profitable farming operation without the large capital outlay. Provides the landowner a return on investment, allows you to participate in major management decisions, and share of risk and reward. I will say the idea of sharecropping, the younger generation says the worst sharecrop tenants are the ones who are older farmers. They nitpick every decision that the younger generation makes as the tenant, but it is quite entertaining. So if you do want to do share crop, it is a mentoring opportunity, is what I call it. However, the younger generation's like, please just let me cash rent. But if you are interested in that, that is, I think you guys all know crop sharing and cash renting. But the idea is a lot of farmers that I work with, they're now cash renting their own land, so the land that they own, and they're continuing to personally rent their rented ground. So sometimes you think that would be backwards. You would want to give up your rented ground to the kids and maintain your own, but there are tax incentives for it to be the other way around. So the passive income of letting that next generation rent your ground and then you maintaining your rented ground that are outside of that. There are ways of doing that, but that's a helpful first kind of succession plan or just a start. So the other one is just become an owner instead of the owner, operator, manager. Increase your time, reduce your stress, get rid of all of the jobs you hate doing. I think people forget that there's a lot of jobs that you're like, man, when I'm doing it, I would love to give it to the next generation. But I somehow forget that when the next generation asks me what they would like me to do. So yeah, become the owner instead of owner, operator, manager. So really, where this all starts is, what are your goals? We can't have an estate plan, a good estate plan or a good transition plan without knowing your goals. When you go to an attorney's office, the first thing they ask from you is, what do you want to do? What are your goals? If you can't answer that question, then you just wasted $250 to $350 for their hourly rate, which I don't know what it is in Southeast Kansas, but that's about an average as I've seen across the state. So are your goals to retire? Is that an actual goal? What are you retiring to? I had a farmer, I said Lindsborg earlier, he's out by Lindsborg. Him and his wife, this is their second marriage, they met, both of them were widows. But they met because they both went on a singles cruise at 65 years old. So they got married later in life, their second marriage, and their new goal was that they wanted to do 6 cruises a year. 6 cruises a year. That is vastly different than a man who was only drawing $40,000 a year out of the farm to now wanting to be able to take 6 cruises a year, which would probably cost anywhere from $60,000 to $70,000 just on cruises and flights alone. So we're talking about someone who needs a lot more money in retirement than they ever used during their working life. And then I have people who retire that truly, I believe, they could live off of $30,000 a year and be okay. They are very funny people. I enjoy seeing how they do it, but there are people that live even less because they feel like they're a burden or they don't want to take money away from the farm. And so I've seen people live on $30,000 a year. But what are your goals? Do you have a retirement plan? What does that look like? Is another one of your goals keeping the farm and ranch in the family? Is that a goal? Is your goal just to actually help another young farmer get a start and they don't have to be family? So there's actually a farmer down near, he's in Montgomery County. His goal is to bring a young person back to the farm that's not his family. No one in his family is interested in his farm. They all have very good jobs, but no one's interested in taking over his farm. So his goal is to bring a young family back to Montgomery County and take over his farm. People can have those goals. They don't have to be family, but if the idea is that you want another family to raise their kids on the farm that's not related to you, that can be a goal. Is a goal of yours to provide inheritance to your kids? Do you want your kids to inherit wealth? Are you wanting generational wealth through your kids? Is your goal to keep family relationships strong? Right now, do you guys meet at Christmas and Thanksgiving and Easter? Do you guys have a family picnic that are in the summers? And do you want that to continue after you're gone? And so what are those goals that you have? Give to charity. Again, we are here in the Community Foundation, but is it a goal of yours to be able to give something back to the community that you were raised in? Avoid taxes. I shouldn't put that in there. I shouldn't frame it that way. I should say minimize taxes or maximize your after-tax wealth. But is your real goal to avoid taxes at all costs? And so I have a lot of farmers who say yes to that. And actually charitable giving kind of helps me when talking about avoiding taxes a lot in conversations when I talk with families. So I had 3 siblings, 74, 67, 66, I think, were the 3 siblings. Only one of them had kids. He's the one who was a doctor. 2 kids live in Kansas City, but the other 2 siblings never had children. They all inherited a farm that was inside a C corporation. And they said, what do we do? How do we get out of this? And so we actually have to go into, we had to talk about, to get out of this, if you sell all of this, what are your tax implications? And so what they're deciding to do is sell all of it, but then give it to a charity and a charitable remainder trust and other tools that can be used so that they don't have to deal with taxes and they can leave a legacy. So there are creative ways to avoid taxes, essentially, if that's something you want to do. Well, does everyone have the same goals? So if I put this in front of your family, say just your kids and yourselves, would you have the same goals, do you think? And then how do we decide which goals are the most important of these? And again, all of those are personal decisions. Okay, so bringing in the next generation. So if you are lucky enough or blessed enough or maybe unblessed enough to have family working with you, I don't know how you feel about it, we talk about bringing in the next generation. How do we do that? Well, you have 1,000 different ways of how you can bring in the next generation. I was in Idaho before I came to Kansas. Idaho is known for big families. So there is actually a very large LDS culture, which you Kansas folks would know Mormon over LDS, but they are considered LDS, where I lived. And so minimum 5 kids. So that's the average family size or minimum of my LDS colleagues and friends and everyone in my town. Minimum of 5 children. So when we talk about succession planning, we have 8 usually, so I'd say that's actually more average, 8 just children that have to be involved in these conversations. Think of the farm size that you would need to support 8 families on a farm. It is almost impossible, but people do it. But one of the things that I met with one of these farm families, they had 6 children, 3 boys and 3 girls. And I asked, how have you made it to where all 3 boys have been able to come back? And because all 3 boys had been in the operation now, they just brought the last one back, the youngest one back, and he had been back for 3 years. And I said, how did you do this? How did you start as a one-man show and be able to make room for 3 more? And he said, well, when I came back, my dad gave me everything, just handed it right over to me, said, you can sink or swim with what you have, but I'm retiring. And in the Mormon culture, they actually do retire to something. So they're very big on mission trips, older mission trips. And so they have a very good, vibrant community and things to retire to. But he said, my dad handed me everything when I was 28 years old and told me you can sink or swim. And so I knew in my life that if any of my boys wanted to come back, they have 1 year to decide, and that's 28 years old. So every time a boy hit 28 years old, they had to make a decision on if they're coming back or not. If they come back, Dad was able to help finance another 300 acres of ground. And I understand this is a very profitable operation, potato farming operation. But they were able to expand 300 acres every time a boy wanted to come back. But he had to make that decision at 28 years old. No matter where he was in life, no matter where he had been, he was offered the opportunity at 28 years old to come back and run 300 acres personally. Again, helped finance my dad, but there was no rhyme or reason for 28 years old beside the fact that Dad had come back at 28 years old. No rhyme or reason. Not, oh, that sounds like a good age. Well, actually, that is how it went. It sounds like a good age. But that was the only consideration that they had for bringing someone back. There wasn't, you have to go work for 5 years for someone. You have to go to college. It was truly 28 years old, you can come back. You can transfer in the next generation or bring in the next generation whenever you want, however you want, set parameters or expectations to do that. But it doesn't have to make sense, and it can still work. And so that's the point of the story, is that it didn't make sense to me that they were able to make it work just by setting an age range. Each boy got the exact same way of entering, so I guess there are some parameters in that. But they didn't have to take the opportunity, but each of them were presented with the opportunity. So bringing in the next generation, you can hand it all over at once. You can hand it all over at once when you're alive. You can do it after death. You could sell it to them. You could help them start their own operation that is separate from yours. You could have them start a new enterprise. You can have them manage a small part of your farm for a few years. I have a lot of people that are like, we're going to give them a quarter, let them make their management decisions on that quarter. If I like what they do, then I'll let them expand. My friend Sam is actually with my husband. They farm in Nebraska. His dad let him make, on a quarter, let him do cover crops for 1 year. His dad was very upset. He said it looked so dirty out there, that it wasn't clean, it looked so messy. Complained the whole year about how Sam wanted to do cover crops, even though it was only on this this quarter. Complained. Said, we're never doing it again. I can't stand the look of it. The next year, they took out the cover crops. It was the best producing cornfield that they had. Dad said, oh God, I can't go back on saying I'm never doing it again. So now he's doubled down, saying we're never doing it again. However, things like that happen, where we're scared of letting the next generation make a huge decision that could impact the whole operation or a very costly change. But we need to make sure that they know how to manage if you want them to take over this business. Again, failing to prepare that next generation for making management decisions is a huge part of why family businesses fail. They don't know how to do it. So you can help them expand the current operation. So working alongside of you, help them expand the current operation. So next steps would be make a plan for retirement, complete a farm financial analysis, maybe share it with your family, prioritize your goals, and make a plan to accomplish your goals. And so the next part of my presentation is just some issues that I've seen personally over the last 3 years of being in this role in Kansas that I just want to make farm families aware of and what we kind of talked about within these farm families. So a big issue facing farm families, you can see lack of any type of documentation. So I think this is pretty, maybe you guys feel very targeted when I say these things, but a lack of any type of documentation. Fairness between on-farm and off-farm, affordability of 2 generations, generational differences, and then potential tax exposures. So documentation, what I've seen in the last year or so, well, actually last 3 years, is that a lot of farm families don't even have basic wills or trusts. Well, if you die without a basic will or trust, you go into what's called intestate. Intestate means that you go by the state's rule of how people can inherit things. It's not much different than what people have, but it is more annoying and costly to deal with intestate. A lot of lack of documentation is no operating agreements or partnership agreements. In the last 2 years, I have been a part of 4 partnership separations, and there was no partnership agreements. So I tell people it's really easy to get married. It's really hard to get divorced. And it's really hard to think about divorce when you're getting ready to get married. And so when you're going into business together, you're very excited. You want to share into the profits. You want to share the expenses across 2 people, or more. But it's really hard to get back out. So partnership agreements, you should probably have one. It's not too late to come up with one. But really, it's supposed to help dictate how to get out of partnership. So one of the farm families I work with, they're in Burlington. They owned about 3,000 acres in joint partnership. They had 4 people's names on every deed of land that they had. So both brothers and their spouses. We had the conversation of what happens when half of this farm ground is owned by one side's children and the other side's children. So one brother had 4 children, the other brother had 2. What happens? One of them could force a sale at any point if they're in undivided interest and they ask for a partition action. So a lot of things could go wrong. But again, we had no partnership agreements in place to kind of identify what will happen if we want to get out of partnership together. So what could go wrong? Intestate, probate, confusion, lack of knowledge on how things were handled, loss of business. So not great things. How I have been kind of helping people come up with tools to manage this lack of documentation, family meetings and communication. A lot of people, we've been setting up operating agreements. So did you know that if you have an LLC, you should have an operating agreement? You might have never seen it, but you have one. So there are people that are in LLC structures that have never seen an operating agreement. So they don't know how people can be bought out of their LLC shares. They don't know how they're supposed to manage the wealth or the structure that comes into it. Some people needed job descriptions. What is my role on the farm? What is their role on the farm? What are our jobs? How are decisions made? And so we work through that exercise with some families. Written and signed employment contracts. Too many times, like I said, a lot of my farm families, they call me, they are in their 40s, and they said, I have not been able to make a management decision on this farm. And I was promised at 25 years old that after 7 years of showing my work ethic, showing that I'm interested, showing that I care, that I would be able to start making management decisions. And this call happened because this 40-year-old's truck broke down, and he asked if he could go buy a new pickup through the business. And Dad said, no, we'll just get the truck fixed. We can fix it. And the idea that he wasn't even able to make a decision about buying a new pickup after being on the farm for 15 years really showed that none of the promises that were made to them to come back were ever going to be fulfilled. And so what I've worked with farm families that are having someone come back is talking about employment contracts. How is someone getting paid? What are kind of the parameters of when they get to start making decisions? And these are very important for non-related party transfers. A lot of the farm families that I have in our Land Link program, the landowners, they want to feel protected by the employee coming in, but also it's really hard to trust someone that you're not related to when it comes to a farm transfer. And so a lot of the land seekers who are going into these situations want to make sure that they're not just coming a farmhand for the rest of their life, that there's actually going to be a transfer of management over to them, and we do employment contracts to reflect that. Updated operating, lease, and business agreements, and then basic estate documents. So everyone should have an estate plan. Again, if you don't create your own plan, the plan you have is the state of Kansas plan, which it goes half to your children and half to your spouse. Unless you guys are in joint ownership with rights of survivorship on a lot of things, then it would go straight to your spouse. But intestate is half to your children, half to your spouse. So fairness. Oh God. So I met yesterday with 4 children, 4 adult children and their parents. The oldest was 55, the next one's 53, 49, and then they had a bonus baby who was only 40 years old. And so I met with them and their parents yesterday because mom and dad are wanting to redo their estate plan. Their first plan said undivided interest, all my children. So everything in undivided interest to all my children because I love them equally. But they had heard from many people that undivided interest is the root of all evil. And so I do say that, and I proudly will wear that. But undivided interest, the root of all evil. And so they said, oh, we thought maybe we should change our estate plan, designate certain parcels to different children so they can all be the manager of their own ship or the captain of their own ship so they can make their own decisions. And so they wanted to bring the children together to talk about this new idea. One of them had been on the farm for 30 years. The 55-year-old, he had been on the farm for 30 years. The rest of them have had off-farm jobs, have never come back to help. And he said, okay, so I have been here for 30 years. I have only received $24,000 a year for my 30 years. That wage has never been increased. That wage has always been $24,000. I believe that my just kind of sweat equity would be these 2 pieces of ground above what you guys get. Well, those 2 pieces of ground came up to $1.8 million more than what the other 3 siblings would inherit. If you could imagine, all hell broke loose. The idea of trying to get off-farm heirs to understand that their brother had been only making $24,000 a year. They did not believe that. Now we have to kind of give them the books. But at the end of the day, I told them, I said, it's not your decision, it's your parents' decision. Every part of this ownership is in your parents' name. If they want to give it all to charity, They are more than able to do that, and they should do that if that's what they want to do. But a lot of children view that it's unfair to be unequal. And what I say is this bottom point is fair is giving each child what they need to be successful. And so if that child needs to have the farm to be successful because it's their job, it's their livelihood, then that's what's going to make them successful. If your other 3 children get $1 million and they have their careers, I would say that's pretty nice to get that, and that would be something that's fair as they are successful. So, family fights, family legacies end, people sell the farm when we talk about fairness. So I wanted to show this because I make it a point to share this information every time I do a presentation, which is my colleague Shannon Farrell at Oklahoma State University is an ag law professor for Oklahoma State University. And you can try to use a magnifying glass to look at these numbers. The gist of it is that they ran a simulation with South Central Kansas farm management data. And they said if you gave half of everything to a city kid and half of everything to a farm kid in undivided interest, what is that likelihood that that farm kid could survive after 3 years? And the chance of that farm kid being able to survive after buying out their sibling is less than 1%. Farm kids cannot survive buying out half the operation from a non-farm kid, especially if there's no parameters on they can buy it for a discount. They have to hold land for a certain amount of years so that they can pay back their other off-farm sibling. If there are no stipulations in that, the likelihood of that farm kid being able to survive undivided interest is less than 1%. So it's just staggering. These results, again, were over many farms, many years, and yeah, likelihood of you surviving undivided interest and keeping a farm going is unlikely. So there's also my colleague Dick Whitman. He is from the University of Idaho with me. He did what is the value of transition planning. And so every time you see a bar and it's cut into 1/3, there were 3 kids in that family. And after one person died, the farm was worth only 1/3 of what it was the year before because the farming heir only had 1/3 of its assets. So they had to continue to buy the farm back from their other siblings and build and build and build again. And then they did the exact same thing to their kids, who they only had 2 kids at that point, but they cut their farm's net worth again in half. And that farm did the exact same thing, buying assets over time, rebuying half a combine, rebuying half of the ground. And then they did it to a next generation. And 2 kids again. They missed out on about $4.75 million worth of growth that they could have had if they didn't have to keep buying themselves out over and over again. So I talked to families about buy-sell agreements, transfer on death deeds, clear division of assets in estate plans, long-term lease agreements, and business entities to help mitigate that fair conversation. So affordability, KFMA estimates that close to $90,000 for family living expenses, not including taxes. If that's true for family living, then a farm would need to have net farm income close to $200,000 to afford 2 families on that farm. Additionally, farm kids to make enough money to be able to buy out parents. A lot of farm families are like, we would want our kid to start buying us out of machinery and equipment. Well, if you're only paying your child $24,000, where is that money going to come from to have them buy you out of machinery and equipment? And so a lot of things, next generation could go bankrupt trying to do this. And then the older generation doesn't feel comfortable to retire. And so what we talk about is, again, needing that farm financial analysis, talk about retirement planning. Are there life insurance policies that could be at play? And then what are some non-cash compensations that you guys offer? So that could mean, are you providing them with a house? So do they need so much money because their full take-home pay is $24,000, but you're giving them a house, truck, gas, utilities? Are these all included? Because then you might actually be paying them close to $60,000 a year, not 24. So we need to look at the whole picture. Another part is generational differences. A lot of the farm families that I worked with, we are broaching the subject of generational differences. My generation has very much gone to the fact of we want to be home with our families, but we also want flexibility. And people say, well, how could you want that when you have a farm? What is flexibility when you are a farmer? And so there are things of incorporating family into the lifestyle. Also, this next generation has more awareness of living wages and needs, and communication looks a lot different. I had farmers that have been fighting with their children that work on the farm, because when they were the child on the farm, they would show up at mom and dad's every Monday morning at 8 a.m. to have coffee, to talk about what they were going to do that week. Well, their adult children now, who are in their 30s, just text dad what they're going to do that week. And we have had lots of conversations about how dad doesn't check his phone. And so then dad is playing a game of telephone trying to find out where people are. Are they even working? And so we have to go over conversation or communication guidelines. So what could go wrong? Well, if you say, gosh, my kid wants to be off on the weekends, how can they do that? How can the farm continue? And so you don't feel like you can trust them to get the work done because they're not working weekends. And so what that means is you're going to take hold of the reins even harder. And then the next generation might not be interested in coming back if you continue holding the reins. So again, employment contracts, communication of expectations. We had our family in service, and one of the funny things was we broke out the families. We did patriarch, matriarch, and children. And so I ran the room of matriarchs, so that just means women in the family. And one of the things was communication of expectations. When I moved back to the farm, I had to live in the not so great farmhouse with a not awesome kitchen, and I couldn't change anything because the home was owned by the corporation, and I had to live in this horrible house. So should I build my own house and make my next generation live in this house? Or am I just systemically doing this to our children? And I thought that was a great recognition of that. But how do we manage those expectations? So the expectations of the first one was, you will live in this crappy house and we will build our house. And so her expectations on her was they got that farmhouse. The older generation could build the house of their dreams. And so will the expectations be the same for that next generation? And then tax exposures. A lot of the families that I work with put tax exposure higher on the priority list than legacy. So the idea of having to pay taxes is crippling. And so a lot of things don't get done because they are so worried about taxes. And so that would be the difference between gifting while alive versus death versus selling. And people get very concerned about capital gains tax, income tax, and they also get concerned with giving someone stepped up basis. So what happens usually when you avoid taxes and avoid taxes and avoid taxes, you then pay more taxes. So, and then there's no transition while alive. and then everyone is waiting for you to die. So my friend Shannon Farrell said, don't give people a reason to wish you dead. And sometimes if people don't want to pay taxes and don't want to give away assets, people are wishing for you to die. So, continued conversations with your accountants, our business entities. Can you do a contract sale? Can you do a mix of gifting and selling? Could you offset some of that income or taxable gain with charitable giving? And so those are some of the things. But fun fact, everyone in this room will die. Those are facts. Implementation of a state is not an if, it's a when, and when is an absolute mystery. If I knew when you all would die, I would be the richest person in this world. So unfortunately, we have to plan for that day because it will come. So Enlist professionals, I'm not going to go through all of these. You can see on your packet what each role these professionals do for your estate and succession plan, and they are all very important, and especially ones that are going to help you reach your goals, like charitable giving team or gift planning team, if that's something you're interested in. So I'm going to skip to my slide that talks about my office. So K-State, they received a large grant to bring me here. The day my office opened was the day that I set foot on K-State campus in Waters Hall. If any of you have been to Kansas State, Waters Hall looks the exact same. So it has not changed. There is still not water for Waters Hall. We have water only 2 out of the 5 days a week. It is actually, I think, a HIPAA violation or some violation, OSHA, I think, OSHA violation. But my office is a part of the AgEcon department. I am an ag economist by training. I work in the AgEcon department at Kansas State University. But the reason I'm here is because we saw the need for people to work on transition for the state of Kansas. And so I run a Kansas Land Link, where I am matching land seekers, so kids interested in farming, with people who do not have someone interested in farming. Again, I talked about the landowner that's down in Montgomery County, and they are a part of our land link, and they're searching for that land seeker. And so we have about 130 land seekers currently in our land link program, and we have 22 to 23 landowners in our land link program. When I make a match or any family calls me, I actually go out and meet with farm families. So probably 2 days out of the week, which I try to make sure it's the days the bathrooms aren't working in Waters Hall. I am out meeting with farm families across the state of Kansas. And so yesterday, I did have my 3-year-old stay with my mom so that I could go to Ellsworth, and then I went up to Kensington, which is on the way to Phillipsburg. And so I met with 2 farm families just in the day yesterday. And we had 2 very different farm families, what they needed from me. But I work with farm families really goal setting and talking them through how to prepare them for going to an attorney or changing their current estate plan, or they want to work on getting out of machinery and equipment and doing that without a huge tax burden, or just talking about, oh, we need to sell, we need to do it so that, again, we need to manage some taxes. Another part of my job, which Kim talked about, is that we teach classes in the spring. We teach a returning to the farm course for juniors and seniors at K-State, that if they ever think they're going to return to the farm, we're trying to teach them how to be a good owner and operator for the farm. And we actually make your business partner sign off on it. And so what we do is we make every child or student that's in that class have their parents sign off on them taking this class, because a large part of the class is doing financial work and doing goal setting and talking to your family. And so we actually have family members sign off on their kid taking that class. So taking that next step in the process of transition can feel overwhelming. I understand it's like drinking from a fire hose. You could hear, like Kim said, I could talk about any subject. I didn't even talk about what estate taxes are. I did not talk about gift tax planning. I could talk about many things, but I don't have enough time in the day to sit here and talk about everything. But it can feel very overwhelming. The key is to put one foot in front of the other. What is your next step for you? That might be calling my office. That might be talking to your banker. That might be talking to your accountant. That might be talking to your spouse. Understanding what you and your spouse want is probably the best first step. I had a guy in Smith Center. I was like, you need to have a family talk. You need to talk to your family. And he raised his hand and he was like, should I talk to my spouse? And I was like, yes, they are your family. Also, by saying that, I definitely knew him and his wife were not on the same page of what their goals are. And that's a very hard place. But if you guys approach the rest of the family not being on the same page as spouses, you're going to have a his camp and a her camp. And it comes really hard when we start having camps and then we can't come back together. So the key is to put one step in front of the other. What's your first step? A discussion with family members, their goals. Is the next generation returning? How people retire? Is it meeting with a CPA or attorney or wealth manager? Is it projecting the income for later in life? Is it reviewing those operating agreements or estate documents? Is it writing down your legacy and being a part of your legacy? But the key is to keep moving forward. And so that's all my slides were today. Again, if you want to know basic estate planning, right now, the estate tax exemption, $13.9 million per person that you can give to your family without them paying estate taxes. Kansas doesn't have state estate taxes, so you only have to worry about federal. You can gift up to $19,000 per person this year without having to file a gift tax return. So you and your spouse could give $38,000 a year without filing a gift tax return to one individual person. So those are some of the things that people normally ask me about. But yeah, so those are just little tidbits that I didn't have in my presentation, but people love to hear about. Also, I know some of you in here have lost spouses in the last couple of years or maybe within the last year. There is portability that is still available. So if you have not done portability of estate tax exemption, talk to your accountant about that because that's very important. And I actually had a lady when I was up in Garnett say, I am very mad that I've gone to many succession planning talks and no one's talked about portability with me because she missed out on using like $10 million of a husband's estate tax exemption because she didn't file portability. So if you have any questions about that, let me know. But yeah, if you had a spouse that passed away within the last year, talk to your accountant about portability because it's very important, especially when we're in high estate tax exemption years. In 2026, the estate tax exemption will be sunsetting to $5 million per person, but it is inflation adjusted. So it could be around $7 to $8 million per person, but that is cutting what we have now in half. With Trump in office, we pray something gets passed for it to be raised again, but that's not guaranteed. So just know if you have an estate tax exemption or you're close, then you need planning maybe a little bit more than others. So, yeah.
Round of applause for Ashley.
Oh, sorry.
No, good. Thank you, Ashley. I'm just going to leave that on, or you can hang around for just a second for some questions. I just want to share a little bit about what the Community Foundation is, and part of the reason that we're sponsoring this, and then I'm sure Ashley's anxious to get on the road and back to her family. We'll take a little bit of time for questions as well. That fell off there, Matt, and I just lost there it is. Getting microphone on here for the recording. So first and foremost, we ask you all to sign in on the sheet there. There we go. Figure out how that works. If you do not sign in, we'd like your email. We'll send out the slides, and then Ashley was gracious enough to say okay to recording. So we've been recording this, and we'll send a link where you can watch this again, or if there's certain parts you wanted to revisit, or if you need to share it with family members who weren't here or children that weren't here, we'll send that to you. So as far as why the Community Foundation, CFSEK, and the Girard Area Community Foundation decided to host this event, one was connection with Ashley, but the whole reason Community Foundations were formed were to keep wealth in our communities. That was really the impetus. The state has lots of projections. We could bore you with numbers, but the billions and forecasted out, I think, to 2075 $1 trillion of generational wealth that is going to change hands in Kansas as a whole state. It's a big deal. We know situations for some of you may be differing, but as Ashley talked about, if you don't have the next generation or kids here, or they're out of state, sometimes, farms or any assets can sell. Those can go to different parties, and that control or otherwise doesn't stay in our community. So we know that legacy portion is very important, and that's a lot of what we do as the Community Foundation. And if you're not familiar with us, I just want to share a few numbers. The Community Foundation in Southeast Kansas was founded in 2001. It was an initiative of the Kansas Health Foundation. Within that time, we've given out more than $24 million in grants and scholarships here in Southeast Kansas. We're an undefined region of Southeast Kansas, so we work. We granted in 18 different counties here in Southeast Kansas last year. We cover a pretty good footprint. Danielle and Kim and Dan with the Girard area are focused more obviously on your region here, but we are all supporting one another here in our areas of Southeast Kansas. So we have about $70 million in assets. What we do with those is ideally endowing those to give back. That's why we can give out $24 million over the course of time that we've existed. But the real focus is that it is your community. We want to support Southeast Kansas. We support so many different programs and nonprofits for vital services here. And I'm going to share in just a second about sort of what that looks like. But that's over $2 million in grants each year. It should be closer to $2.5 million this year. A lot of scholarships. Our scholarships are ramping up. Ainsley's one I'm going to talk about as far as our Bill House scholarships. But a lot of different ways to leave a legacy and an impact on Southeast Kansas, especially if you're thinking about what to do with your estate, and charitable giving may be a part of that, as Ashley talked about, and the avenues we can go. So really it is thinking about your legacy. I could talk for quite a while as well about what the Community Foundation is and what we can do. But the idea to remember is we're very flexible. So really it's about how you can benefit your community if you want to do that. So if it's very specific for one nonprofit here in your community, or this school or the school district, or something else that you have a passion about, we can find a way to make that work. Everybody has different interests and different causes. We are extremely flexible tool to achieve what your charitable giving goals are. So keep that in mind, even if it's just having a conversation. Most of the time we find a way to say yes to making something happen if you have a charitable goal, not 100% of the time, because we have some IRS rules to follow and otherwise. And it's about carrying on your legacy in a way that you want. So that, again, takes all different forms. Scholarships are a popular one a lot of times, and those can be any criteria that you would want. So it can be just, Girard High School graduates. It can be for certain majors, lots of different opportunities there as far as scholarships go, but then grants as well to support specific nonprofits, areas of interest. Just if we can be of help in discussing those possibilities, that's really the message we wanted to get with you today. And then as far as farmland goes, we have one real good example. Is anybody familiar with the Bill House name? I know you are as a recipient. So Bill passed away, and I'm trying to think, 2007, 2009, I should have that date down. Was a big rancher here in Kansas. He was a president of the National Cattlemen's Association, big player in the realm back in the day. But his foundation that was founded after his passing, they had a lot of land. And we acquired, a longer story than this, but essentially 6,300 acres were gifted to our community foundation. There was a lease on that. We managed it for quite a while. We were very excited to get that sold last year, and it's going to provide some very significant grants and scholarships. We've been doing scholarships, and again, Kim's daughter was one of those recipients. But very significant legacy. You will see Bill House name here in your community more and more. You're going to see it in Southeast Kansas more and more, because the sale of this land is going to mean hundreds of thousands of dollars each and every year here in grants and scholarships in Southeast Kansas. And you may not have 6,300 acres to leave us, but this is a little bit of an extreme example, but what we can do of carrying on that legacy. Bill's name will exist here in our area for forever now through these funds. So if that name recognition is important, or you just, again, want to help students or your community, that's where the Community Foundation may be able to help you in your charitable giving goals, if that's one of those. We just love the opportunity to talk. You're welcome to reach out to Danielle or to Kim or to Dan or any of the Girard Area Community Foundation. We'll probably end up putting you in contact with us, because, again, we're the paid employees there. We do this day in and day out. But reach out if you just want to have a conversation. Happy to take you to lunch. Can sort of share some ideas or help you even brainstorm some of those things Ashlee talked about as far as transition goes. So our contact information, you have the slides, and again, we'll send those to you. Our contact information is there. Josh put on the last page as well a big graphic that has Ashlee's information if you want to get in touch with her and what AgKansitions can do, or with either one of our community foundations. So thank you very much for attending. I did want to, again, offer a few minutes here if you guys have any questions for Ashlee to visit. But please, if you didn't sign in, sign in if you want to take any food with you as well. But thank you for attending. And with that, I would open it back up if anybody has questions for Ashlee.